Hi, it's Spence from 1WD University. Today I want to talk about an important subject that's going to be even more important going forward in 2017, and that is page speed. Now, I'm not speaking as an expert on anything of Google's motives, but they've basically made it clear that page load times are going to be a factor in determining whether or not your sites or your client sites are going to drop out of rankings. And so if you're concerned about organic search results at all, it's important to know your site should load fast. I think from a practical standpoint, just loading the site fast is critical to the user experience. And even though many people now are on really high-speed connections all the time, we found that there can be big savings by applying some simple techniques. And so I'm going to go into a whole series of mini courses starting today where I will show you, not talk about, but I will talk about the reasons behind using certain types of software and certain types of plugins, certain types of techniques in conjunction with each other, because I don't think now we live in any vacuum where one solution does it all. Let's start out with the basics. First of all, at 1WDTV, I'm going to give you a little dip behind here today, what's going on in our dashboard. In 1WDTV, we're using a free tool that I've used in the past many times as a gauge. It is far from perfect, but it gives you a relative measurement, and that's tools.pingdom.com. And in doing so, you can test from different locations, which is another factor I'm going to mention in a second. We right now have moved the 1WDTV site over to Pilvia, our friends at Pilvia, which have Google Cloud-based hosting. This is a server, believe it or not, in Belgium, I've been told. So even though it would be nice, since we're in the US, if we had one that's closer to us, that'll come. But even if I test it from any of the locations around the world, I don't see a huge variation, which is a testament to why the hosting partner and where you put your site is critical. I'm going to talk about that in the mini courses. We're going to show you today how the caching plays a big factor in this. So when I use Pingdom tools, I'm looking at two things. Number one is I want to see whether or not I'm breaking any major rules. Now this is where Pingdom is not perfect, and none of the tools are, because it gives me a bunch of things I can't control, right? I mean, if I was, when I went through school, if I got a C because the kid next to me was picking his nose, that would have been disheartening. But I get that kind of problem here where I can't really control that, YouTube thumbnails and Google Tag Manager and so forth have not set their image resources to expire, but it doesn't let me, turn those off as a choice. So I have to ignore some of the grades here. They're just a little silly. Same thing with, combining JavaScript and so forth. I'll go into detail about this with the various mini courses on each caching plugin, but there are certain things I can do, which I've done here, that compress them down to just so many files. And after that, I'm stuck. Likewise, third-party services, like we use Crisp for our little intercom feature. I've spoken to the developers and the owners. They're great guys. They're just not going to use less number of scripts. They've got two different scripts for two different reasons, and that's the way it goes. However, the second factor that's important here is the load time and the total speed, as well as what I call what I will show you is called the waterfall. So here we're doing pretty nice because we've got a load time of about 1 second. Google is indicating that around 6 seconds is your drop dead point. If you go below 6 seconds, great, better. I would say something between 3 to 4 seconds is an ideal sort of compromise ground. If you get into the 1 or 2, 2.5, 3 second range, you're doing really well. And the whole point is that no matter what browser somebody's on or where they're loading, the waterfall is going to show you where the little nuances lie. And this is what the coursework is going to show you. I'm going to go into details about how to fix the things that you see in order to improve the performance. Now I'm giving you an introduction here because I want to talk about the plugin that we're currently using as well as a plugin that I've used in the past, and I'm going to be revisiting some of those things. So right now we're currently using WP Rocket. And the way we came to WP Rocket was simple. During the course of doing our membership sites, we played with a lot of plugins that did caching, and one of them was, it's now called Zencache, I believe. They used to be called something else. The guys that have created it are S2 member. That's one I'll talk about again. They're still around, and I think it was called Quick Cache at the time. We're going to cover them, but I switched to WP Rocket because they went through a new development cycle last year, right when we were doing the height of our 1WD TV stuff, and I needed something that was not currently being changed a lot. So I switched to WP Rocket because it was new at the time, and they've made some drastic improvements, and I'm really pleased. The speed increase is dramatic. I like the fact that it's very simple on the dashboard because the granddaddy and the I'd say the powerhouse of all of them is still W3TC. And I'm actually in conversations with Frederick, who is the author of this. This is over 1 million people have downloaded it. And I made a video back, I can't remember what the date was. It was Lab Secrets days. So this was, in 2011. It's got almost 300,000 views to show how to set up W3TC, because it is like the nuclear missile silo of caching. You can do everything under the sun. But as a result, I wouldn't put my kid at the controls of a Minuteman silo. I'm not sure that I would put every site owner at the controls of W3TC. But if you are in a space where you want to know about that stuff, I'm going to cover it. So as a quick preview, W3TC, Rocket Cache, and I believe it's Zen Cache now. That was another issue too. They kept changing their name. Comet Cache, formerly Zen Cache. Now they're back to Comet Cache. Okay, great. So Comet Cache, Rocket Cache, or WP Rocket, W3TC. There are other caching plugins out there which I may decide to cover, but I'm going to cover these three because I've actually tested, used, instructed on all three of them. Now, let me give you a quick sample of what happens on the back end. With WP Rocket, the reason I thought that this was a good choice for us at the time, because I didn't want to go through the configuration of everything at W3TC at that time, is that it gives me the ability pretty much to start out of the box and not have to do much. I can just allow things like lazy load. I can decide to optimize or not. I can cache for individual users depending on whether or not they're on mobile. Here's the individual user. Here's whether they're on mobile. I can set the caching times and so forth. I can turn off WordPress as emoji. Don't worry. I'm going fast here because this isn't the lesson. This is just the sneak peek of what's going to happen. Advanced options. I can remove those dreaded query strings from anything inside of my site, which it'd be really cool if I could do it otherwise, but that requires me on Nginx, which is what we're using to serve, to write some custom rules. If you're on an Apache server or Lightspeed server, you actually can do this much more efficiently. Also, our images are hosted on Amazon S3, so that's another issue I'll cover. And there's more stuff here, preloading, content delivery networks, and so forth. But even if you just touch the basic two tabs, you do see a dramatic increase. If you were to look back at my testing, you'll see that we were starting in the range of 4.5 seconds. And the things that I basically ended up doing were, number one, to make sure that I got all the resources that I could combined. Number two is that I got rid of any front-loading JavaScript that could be moved to the footer, and I combined as much as I could. I also did some things with, of course, optimizing the images, making sure that there weren't like too many of them or too big. And then finally, the biggest thing to improve is to look to see what exactly you're trying to do in terms of the user. So if most of my users, in this case at 1WDTV, are coming in and reading the blog, that's going to get cached because that's pretty well static. But if on the other hand, we have some content on the inside that is only for logged in users, I can optionally decide, maybe I'll make one big cache for everybody because they're not going to have very different setups on the inside. You know, everybody who logs in gets access to everything or not. Or I might decide to do individual. But either way, by deciding whether or not to cache the content on the inside, I also help to speed that up as well. When I do this page test, this is just for the public-facing side. So, of course, I was able to really crunch it down. All right, so this is intended as sort of a heads up to you because A, I'm starting this new series of mini courses. B, I want to teach you how to connect these all together. So we're going to talk about using the optimized hosting, what that means, setting up the hosting in a way that works with whichever caching plugin you have, using the inside configurations of both where you store your media files in your library and so forth, which, by the way, over here, if I go to the media library, I'm still using the default media library in WordPress. I think this is actually imperative. You don't want to disconnect it. But you may notice, let's go over here, that all of our images are automatically being uploaded to Amazon S3, and they're also being optimized in that sense so that when we do that, here's the actual URL. When we do that, we know that regardless of where we decide to have our hosting in the future or regardless of what we decide to do, these are always going to be available separately. That also helps with the load times because your browser can download almost an unlimited amount of resources from multiple locations. The bottlenecks occur, and you look at this waterfall, the bottlenecks occur if all of your resources are trying to come from one URL, because your individual web server can only handle a certain number of concurrent connections and threads. Whereas if you have multiple sources for where your content comes from, that's like having a telephone that you connect to 12 of your friends all at once, and they're sending you information. You can get a lot more stuff through the wire into your brain faster. And so that's the biggest reason why we'll go into details about how to set up an Amazon S3 or another CDN. And so if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I would definitely love you to ping me over at 1WDTV. If you go over here, please note we've got 2 ways to reach us now, and I'm going to mention this in the video. We're available for anybody for free. So the first and easiest way is just use the pop-up and just come in and give us your email so we can see your name and just say, hey, this is me. I have a question about whatever. The second is just to go ahead and use this call button here that I've installed. Just click here and it'll pop up a call that we can chat. It doesn't have to be a full 15 minutes, but I'm really eager to find out in our community what questions you have, because we've got so many things that we want to cover. I want to know what is bugging you. What can I help you with today? And what kind of content can we create at 1WDTV? I hope you enjoyed this sneak peek, and look for this over in the courses area starting this week. Okay? I'll see you in the next video.